welcome to another edition of Phantom of Darkness's Ghost Stories. Before we begin, I just wanted to say that Harrison Ruffin Tyler, the grandson of US President John Tyler, born in 1790, is still alive. The grandson was born in 1928. Don't believe me? Look it up. Now like, share, and subscribe. I just said that to make sure you were paying attention to the video. Now let's begin with the ghost stories. Our family has a cabin in the woods on Bunkin Hill in New Hampshire. It was built by hand the old-fashioned way by my great-grandfather in 1931. Last fall, while sitting around the campfire, my cousins and I shared weird stories about the cabin. Here are two of them. One cousin and a friend went to stay up there once in the winter in the late 70s. Usually no one goes up there in the winter. It was early evening, and they were cooking supper when all of a sudden, the front door shook hard, as if someone was trying to open it. It shook so hard that the dishes on the kitchen shelves rattled. My cousin called out, "Who's there?" but got no answer. His friend and him were getting a little unnerved. My cousin grabbed the fireplace poker and his friend grabbed the butcher knife. When they flung open the door, there was no one there. It was snowing hard and had covered their tracks from earlier in the day. There were no fresh footprints at the door or leading up to the deck. They had no explanation for it. They pegged the door shut and had no problems the rest of the night. In 2001, I was staying there by myself one July. It was a little unsettling staying there alone, as you are out in the woods by yourself with no one around. I'd just gone to bed and was half asleep when I looked over at the doorway going into the living room. I had the feeling more than seeing it, that there was someone standing there. It was almost like a fine white cloudy figure. I felt a feeling of my grandfather, who died in 1979, as I love him very much, and he felt I was more a son than a grandson to him. I wasn't scared. I rolled over on my stomach with the idea of going to sleep. I heard real soft running steps and felt someone jump on my back. That brought me fully awake, and I sat right up. No one was there. My grandfather was a big practical joker with an equally big sense of humor. I think he was pulling a fast one on me. I had no other things happen to me the rest of my stay. My family has also had 3 different Sasquatch experiences at the cabin, but that is a different matter. I would like to remain anonymous with this, please. Thank you. This story is from years ago when my 2 daughters were quite young, around 6 months and 3. We lived in a very old 2-bedroom trailer on the corner of a very small town. The events are still quite clear in my mind, as we experienced things practically daily for the entire time we lived there, about 4 or 5 years. I won't write about all my experiences in this one email, as I'm sure it will be too long. One of the main things that sticks out was when my youngest was around 6 months old. The 2 bedrooms were on the opposite ends of the house, separated by a small hallway, bathroom, the kitchen, and a large family room. Because the kids' bedroom was so far away from ours, we used a baby monitor. Now, I'm not exactly a technology buff, and in fact, I am sometimes downright dumb when it comes to things like that, but I do know the workings of most everyday things. It started one night when I'd put the 2 kids to bed and decided to stay up and read in bed. It was around midnight, and I was comfortably prepped against my pillows and very into my book when I heard a faint but distinctly male voice come over the baby monitor. It happened so quick that I thought perhaps I was imagining things. Oh, then I went on reading. Not 5 minutes later, I heard the voice again. This time it was a bit clearer and a bit louder. I got up and decided to check on the kids. When I got into their room, they were sleeping soundly, and there was nothing amiss. It was a cool night, so no windows were open to pick up any voices from outside, and the television was off. At the time, we had no radio. I went back to my room and settled back into bed, and began reading again. A half hour passed quietly with not a sound from the monitor, when all of a sudden, I heard the voice again, and this time it said my name. Now I have a very unusual and distinctive name, so I could have not mistaken this. By this time, I was getting a bit annoyed. I got up and before going to check on my kids, I checked that the door was locked. This door was situated just outside my bedroom door and was quite noisy when opened, and then went to check on them once again. As before, they were sound asleep and nothing was amiss. Now I was nearly getting angry and shouted for whoever it was to stop. I stomped back to my room and set my book aside, thinking I would just go to sleep. Now, for anyone who knows me well enough, knows that for me, I don't like the dark. I always sleep with a lamp on. I also have this pet peeve about closet and cabinet doors. They always have to be closed. Don't ask me why. Anyway, when I returned to my room, I found the sliding closet doors standing open. I knew for a fact they were closed because of my slight obsession. So I closed them and made sure to leave my lamp on. Before I climbed into bed, I decided to turn the baby monitor down a bit in hopes that I would not hear the voice again. It was situated in a dresser across the room from my bed. Imagine my surprise when I turned it down, only to find it completely off. I'd forgotten to turn it on. I didn't sleep much that night. A footnote: when I told my husband of these happenings, he just wrote it off as CB interference now. I could see that if the monitor was on, and I also have to wonder because they said my name, and I've only ever met one other person with my name. Who knows? Also, as I thought of it myself, there was no possible way that anyone could have entered this trailer and had been playing a trick on me. The front door was blocked by a large and old armor, as I said earlier. The other door was right by my bedroom, locked and very noisy, and the windows of this trailer was designed so basically no one could come in through them, as they were very high off the ground and had 3 to 4 panes that were cranked open, but didn't leave hardly any space to get in. This particular story isn't exactly frightening, just slightly eerie, I suppose. I'll share more of my experiences in this trailer some other time. I have many stories to share with you all. Here's one of the many that I have. It was in the late winter of early spring 1997. I was spending the night at my baby's house after attending a hockey game and crawled into bed. I was laying in bed on my stomach for at most 2 minutes when suddenly I felt 2 hands on my back. The hands shoved me into the bed so hard that the bed shook for a good minute or 2. I froze with terror, not knowing what to do. I didn't know if I should turn around to see if there was anyone there to see, or just lie there and try to get to sleep. I decided to turn very slowly around to see if I could see anyone. As I turned, I was trying to prepare myself for what, if anything, that I would see. When I finally did turn onto my back, I was relieved to see nothing. I laid in bed with my eyes wide open and my mind racing. I was trying to calm myself down before trying to sleep. After a few moments, I closed my eyes and thought, okay, I'm going to sleep now, and fell asleep shortly after that. I was 11 or 12 when this happened. My dad left to go to the store to buy some milk in a terrible storm. I remember pleading to him not to go because it was so bad out there, but he said we needed milk, and of course I was just a kid. So I was alone with my little brother watching Fat Albert, and I remember my dad being very careful and locked the door every time he left. He also makes me check if the door was locked. So that's what I did. Anyways, we were watching TV when all of a sudden, the doorknob started to shake and unlock by itself. I thought my dad was coming in, so I got up and opened the door, but nobody was there. And I got really scared because nobody else had the house keys besides my mom, but she was at work. I closed and locked the door. Then I saw a tall man. It was like a shadow in the corner of my eye. I told myself that it was all in my head, that I was imagining it. I told my little brother, but he didn't believe it. Then all of the electricity went out in the house, thanks to the storm. At that moment, I had to go to the bathroom. And forgetting about the light, I went to go turn it on, but of course it didn't go on. Well, then I went to the sink to wash my hands, and in the mirror, that's when I saw a man. I turned around and ran towards the door. Next thing I know, the door slammed shut. I was so scared I was paralyzed. I tried to scream, but I couldn't. I managed to turn around and face it. He was 1 foot away from my face. That's when I let out a scream. Then my dad opened the door and he was back, and the creepy man disappeared. Strange things happened after that. Doors opening by themselves, lights turning on and off, and I still see a shadow every once in a while. But I never saw that particular scary apparition again, and I'm glad I haven't. My husband and I got married in September of 2000, and I moved into the house he was renting in Charlestown, West Virginia. It was an old turn-of-the-century home, and it was beautiful. While we were dating, I came to visit him while his parents were staying with him. I slept in the guest room, his parents in the master bedroom, and my husband slept in the den. During the night, I woke up and I felt I was not alone. Then I saw a dark figure walk in front of one of the windows, and then a few minutes later, it walked in front of the other window on the adjacent wall. I froze. I wasn't really afraid. I pulled the covers up just under my chin and closed my eyes tight and repeated silently to myself, "I am protected by God, and nothing can hurt me." I chanted it silently like it was my mantra until I fell asleep. When I told my husband about it, he said I probably saw the shadow of someone walking in front of the floodlights on the wall of the apartment across the street. It isn't possible that that could be the explanation, because I didn't see the shadow on a wall. It looked solid and passed in front of the window on the inside. Also, we were on a second story. Later, when I moved into the house, strange things started to occur. I took 2 months off before looking for work so that I could unpack and get the house in order. I took this time to indulge a little and slept in until about 9:30 to 10 every morning. My husband would leave for work at Dole's at 6:30, and I would fall asleep after he left. At 8 a.m. every single morning, I would hear the front door open. It was a large wooden door that would pop when it opened, and I would hear footsteps walk up the stairs. I couldn't resist getting up and looking around the house to see if anyone had entered. I was always alone, and the front door would still be locked. I figured if this was it, then I was getting off easy. I tried to ignore it a few times, but it sounded so real that I had to get up and check. After a couple weeks of this, my husband's cat started attacking random places on the wall of the home. The outside wall at the top of the stairs was her nemesis. My husband and I were watching television one night when the smell of burnt hair penetrated the living room. The house was very open, with only 4 closing doors. There was a large arch between the living room and the hallway where the front door and the staircase were located. We got a little nervous because we thought that maybe we had an electrical fire on our hands and started checking the outlets. The smell was very strong. We didn't realize it was odd until we walked into the kitchen, which had an open door to the hallway, and the smell didn't permeate into the kitchen. The smell was located only in the hallway and in the living room. We walked into every room in the house, and no other room had the smell. An hour later, the smell left. A few days later, I went to dinner with a friend and came home, and when we walked into the front door, my husband came out of the kitchen where he had been doing dishes and asked me when I came home. I said I had just come home, but he said it wasn't possible because he'd just seen me walk from the stairs into the living room. We looked into the living room, and the curtains were twisted very tightly into ropes. My friend promptly left the house. Maggie, our cat, slept with us. He usually slept right up against me, under my left arm. One night she wouldn't come up from the foot of the bed. She perched on the foot of the bed like she was watching something. My husband fell asleep almost at once upon getting into the bed, and I usually lie awake for a little while. I was just starting to drift off to sleep when something in the hallway growled. I told my husband about it, and he asked if I was sure it wasn't Maggie. There was no way it could have been the cat. I've had cats my whole life, and I know how they sound when they growl, usually high-pitched and gravelly, but this was low and menacing. It sounded like a large dog. Maggie sat on the foot of the bed the entire night. I think she was trying to protect us. It's after this that things got really crazy. My husband was setting the table for dinner when the ceiling light fell out of the ceiling and landed in the middle of the dining room table. It fell with extreme force. We went away for a week, and when we came back, 3 of the glasses I bought right before we got married were broken. 2 had been shattered, but 1 was still together and only fell apart when we tried to pick it up. The top of the glass simply came off the bottom part with a clean, precise edge cut diagonally through the glass. When I would be home alone, Maggie would climb in my lap and tap on the cheek and then lead me out of the room. Whenever I came back, something had been moved. Once, my husband's friends came to visit, and we were sitting in the living room chatting when Maggie came into the living room and stopped dead in her tracks. That was when her tail puffed up and all her hair stood on end. That's when she started hissing at the middle of the living room. She was looking at the floor. When any of us tried to stand up, she would hiss at us. This lasted for about 10 minutes. Then she ran upstairs. Dishes were regularly found broken in the cabinet, and the curtains on the windows going up the stairs were twisted and knotted. One day while I was talking on the phone to my sister-in-law, I was telling her about what was happening in the home, and the door at the top of the stairs slammed shut. I thought that perhaps the wind had caught it, and went upstairs to open it and close the windows in the guest room at the top of the stairs. The room was previously the den, and it wouldn't open. I had to wait for my husband to come home to open it. He had to throw his entire body weight against it to open the door. But when it opened, none of the windows in the room were open. My husband never believed me about the growling until one night. He woke out of a sound sleep and heard the same growling right next to the bed. Maggie was perched on the edge of the bed watching the floor. Then soon after we decided to move, we packed up and had everything but a futon mattress in a U-Haul, and were sleeping on the mattress in the dining room on our last night in the home. I should say trying to sleep, but we couldn't. There was too much noise. It sounded like there was a party in the living room. There were voices and the sound of glasses clanking, and it sounded like someone was running up and down the stairs and hitting the railing with a stick. We left the next day, very tired, but happy to be leaving. Maggie went with us. We moved into a new house, and Maggie started attacking the walls and getting lost in the corner. The vet told us that she was very old and getting blind. Finally, she got so bad that she had to be put down. We were devastated. And 2 days after her death, I was sleeping and woke up to the feeling of Maggie jumping on the bed and walking up to sleep under my arm. I felt an extreme pressure on me, and there was a dark figure standing at the foot of my bed. I tried to speak and wake up my husband, but I couldn't make any sound. I couldn't move at all. I wanted to scream but couldn't. The thing just stood there, and I could tell it was getting a big kick out of scaring me. Shortly after that, we got a new cat, Dexter. Hence we got Dex. We've had no experiences at all. I suppose that there is something to the Egyptian myth that the cats are keepers of the dead, because Maggie and Dex both had protected me. I know that God protects me, and maybe uses my kitties to help with that protection. I recently bought an antique wrought iron bed for my 2-year-old. Get her used to sleeping in it. I lay down with her with my back to the room. On more than one occasion, I felt someone watching over us. I thought it was my husband coming in, but the door is firmly closed. I've also felt a prickly goosebump feeling on my arm like I'm being touched. It only started when I bought the antique bed, which I was told was late 1800s, early 1900s. I was a bit worried about it all. I talked to a psychic. What she said was that it was the spirit of a little old man who once bought the bed for his little girl. He was a kind spirit who meant no harm. My daughter must have reminded him of his daughter. The psychic told me to ask the ghost nicely, but firmly to please leave. I did that one night, laying with my daughter, and haven't felt anything since. And if you'd like me to feel the love, why don't you leave a comment right now and say that you like to do the hanky panky? I don't know what the hanky panky is, but I heard it in the Barbie song, and yeah, I don't know what I'm talking. This whole video has been weird. Hopefully you liked the video, and you can tell me in the comment section below which story you like the most. Comment, like, share, subscribe if you're new, because, you know, I like you guys, and, you know, it's July now, and we got to start new. See you in the next video, guys.